Okay, we have to go all the way through to the next segment here, which is the toolbox for rhythm. So if you can see my cursor moving here, we're going to talk about the tools in the rhythm part of the toolbox, which include rhyme scheme, closed verse, and open, or what we sometimes call free verse. Now there's more than this. There are more tools than this in all of these three sections, but these are the tools that we're going to be mostly talking about during this course. So rhyme scheme, closed verse, and open verse. All right. So the first tool is called rhyme scheme, and the rhythm part of the toolbox actually has to deal with the way words move or the pattern that they follow, the actual rhythm or beats of the poem. So a rhyme scheme is a regular pattern of rhyme, one that is consistent throughout the poem. So for example, it's a pattern that we follow. You'll notice here that when, well, let me read this poem to you and see if you can notice a pattern. There once was a big brown cat that liked to eat a lot of mice. He got all round and fat because they tasted so nice. So you may have noticed that the ends of these sentences alternate with rhyming words. Cat rhymes with fat, and mice rhymes with nice. So the rhyme scheme or the pattern of this poem is A, B, A, B. We just assigned the rhyming words a letter. So all words that have the at sound are letter A, and all words that have the ice sound are given a letter B. So the pattern is A, B, A, B. And when we get to the lesson on rhyme scheme, you'll see that there are many, many, many different rhyme schemes for poems, many different patterns that we're going to learn about. But this is just a very simple one that we used for the example. It's basically just a pattern of how the words rhyme in the poem. Now, closed verse is a poem that follows a specific rhythmic pattern. So I used a poem here that's called a limerick, and limericks have a very special rhythm that you might recognize. So let me read it aloud, and you see, as you listen to it, you can see if you can feel the rhythm of the poem. A flea and a fly in a flue were caught, so what could they do? Said the fly, let us flee. Let us fly, said the flea. So they flew through a flaw in the flue. So can you feel the rhythm in there? There's like definitely a rhythm to this poem. I'm going to say it again. A flea and a fly in a flue were caught, so what could they do? Said the fly, let us flee. Let us fly, said the flea. So they flew through a flaw in the flue. There's a definite rhythm to this poem that you can feel. Da dun da da dun da da dun. Da dun da 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 dun. Da 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 da. So that's the rhythm that you hear in a limerick. Sometimes a limerick starts with this very famous phrase, there once was a man from Nantucket who walked home carrying a bucket, and it will go on and on and on. But that's a very specific pattern that the poet has to stick with in order to be considered closed verse. The poet can't really experiment outside of that pattern, and that's what closed verse is. It's a very specific pattern that the poet follows. All right, so we're going to go, by the way, if you don't know what a flue is the opening to your fireplace. So let's go on to the next one. The last one we're going to talk about in this toolbox of rhythm is open verse, and sometimes we call it free verse. And in an open or free verse poem, there's not any rhythmic pattern or structure that the poet has to follow. The poet can pretty much do whatever he wants. And usually there's no rhyming going on in open verse or free verse. Sometimes it happens by accident, or actually I shouldn't say accident. Poets do intend to include rhyme, but it's not because they have to, it's just because they chose to. So here is a famous poem by Walt Whitman, very famous poet, called A Noiseless Patient Spider. See if you can feel if there's a rhythm or a pattern that the author is following. A noiseless, patient spider. I marked where, on a little promontory, it stood isolated, marked how to explore the vacant, vast surrounding. It launched forth filament, filament, filament out of itself, ever unreeling them, ever tirelessly speeding them. So basically what he's saying here, there's a lot of big words in this poem, but basically what he's saying, there's this patient spider. I saw where he was sitting on a little ledge. He was all alone. That's isolated. I watched him basically figuring out how to explore the surroundings around him. It launched forth, meaning it jumped forward, and filament is the web of the spider that the spider is, sort of pushing out of itself the thread of the web, and ever unreeling them, ever tirelessly speeding them. So he's basically unreeling the web and going fast to make its web. And that's kind of what they're talking about here. But you might have noticed in this poem that there's no rhyming in it, and the sentences sort of just, follow their own rules. They don't necessarily follow any patterns. So I'm going to say it again. A noiseless, patient spider. I marked where, on a little promontory, it stood isolated, marked how to explore the vacant, vast surrounding. It launched forth filament, filament, filament out of itself, ever unreeling them, ever tirelessly speeding them. So it's difficult. If you were trying to clap the rhythm of this poem, it might be very, very difficult, considering that it doesn't really have a specific pattern to it. That's an example of open or free verse. The poet didn't follow anybody else's rules. He made up his own rules for this particular poem. All right. So I should get rid of this red box here, but that's it for the Poetic Toolbox, at least in terms of what we're going to be studying. You have the imagery section of the toolbox, which are things how you imagine them, how the poet wants you to imagine things or envision things. We have melody, which deals with how words sound and how they feel in your mouth. And then rhythm has to do with how words move, what the beats and the meter, where do you say words fast, where do you say them slow. So that's the rhythm of the poem. And that's it. We'll be studying these more in depth in each of the coming lessons.